What if the world's most feared places, the ones whispered of in prophecy, weren't fictional at all? What if Gog and Magog were real? For millennia, these names have stirred terror and awe, invoked by prophets, kings, and warriors as omens of destruction and signs of the end times. But what if their names, their stories, even their locations, were never meant to remain mythical? What if ancient maps, weathered, ink-stained, and dismissed by modern eyes, hold the key to their true geographical origins? In today's episode, we're peeling back layers of forgotten cartography, tracing legends across continents, and examining the most tantalizing question of all. Did our ancestors know something we've forgotten? Before we trace their path across the parchment of history, we need to understand what makes Gog and Magog so enduring and so terrifying. In the book of Ezekiel, Gog is a warlord from the land of Magog, leading a coalition of nations against Israel in a final battle. Some believe he symbolizes chaos unleashed upon the world before a divine reckoning. The Quran, centuries later, introduces Ya'juj and Ma'juj, a lawless people trapped behind an immense barrier by a righteous ruler, often interpreted as Dhul Qarnayn, who many link to Alexander the Great. Then come the medieval Christians, who double down. They imagine Gog and Magog as monstrous descendants of Noah, sealed away by divine intervention, waiting to break free in the apocalypse. Three traditions, three visions, one terrifying idea. A destructive people, isolated somewhere on Earth, who will return to bring about the end. But here's the twist. Many believe these people weren't spiritual metaphors, but physically real. Now enter the cartographers. Early maps weren't just tools for navigation, they were cosmologies, diagrams of divine order, earthly kingdoms, monsters, and myths. And guess who shows up? Let's start with the 6th century cosmographia of Cosmas Indicopleustes, a Byzantine monk who imagined the earth as a flat rectangle with mountains at its edge. He described distant tribes sealed away until the end of days, echoes of Gog and Magog in theological cartography. Centuries later, we get Al-Idrisi's Tabula Rogeriana, 1154, one of the most sophisticated medieval Islamic world maps. There, in the deep north, Al-Idrisi records a tale. A king built a wall of iron and brass to trap wild tribes from wreaking havoc on the world. Sound familiar? These weren't just poetic embellishments. These were attempts to plot where the end times would begin. Fast forward to the 13th century Hereford Mappa Mundi, a stunning circular map drawn on calfskin. In its upper right corner, a chilling annotation. Here be the tribes of Gog and Magog, imprisoned until the day of wrath. They weren't hiding. They were waiting. Let's talk walls. In both Islamic and Christian traditions, the narrative of Gog and Magog becomes inextricably tied to a wall, a literal barrier keeping evil at bay. This isn't metaphorical. Ancient and medieval texts describe this wall as a real structure, somewhere at the edge of the known world. Which brings us to Alexander the Great. Many believed Alexander himself built the barrier. In the Syriac Alexander romance, he journeys to the edge of the world and erects a gate between two mountains to trap demonic tribes. Later Islamic reinterpretations mirror this tale, placing the wall somewhere near the Caspian Mountains or Caucasus. And maps began reflecting this. Cartographers began sketching this legendary wall, often labeling it as the Gates of Alexander, the Iron Wall, or simply the barrier. Where was it? Some said Armenia. Others pointed to Derbent, in modern-day Dagestan, where two ancient stone walls still guard a narrow mountain pass between the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus. Could these be the actual gates referenced by legends? Or were they simply rebranded ruins, ancient fortifications adopted into a growing mythos? The Silk Road connected more than cities, it connected mythologies. As Eastern tales reached the West, and vice versa, the legend of Gog and Magog evolved. Then came Marco Polo. In his travels through Asia, Polo recounts hearing of wild, godless tribes imprisoned in the north. He calls them the wretched descendants of Gog and Magog, and he too connects them to the Great Wall of China. European mapmakers went wild. Maps began showing Magog labeled across vast territories: Scythia, Tartary, the steppes of Mongolia. Some even placed them in northern India, confusing tribal names with biblical ones. But what truly ignited panic was the rise of the Mongol Empire. To many Europeans, Genghis Khan was the embodiment of Gog, an unstoppable force from the east, laying waste to Christian kingdoms. Pope Innocent IV even sent envoys to the Mongols, partially to determine, "Are you the prophesied destroyers?" The reply? Not quite. But the fear lingered. As explorers charted new lands and filled in the blanks of ancient maps, the edges of the world disappeared. So too did the easy hiding spots for Gog and Magog. But not the belief. In the 16th century, British scholars began linking Gog and Magog to specific ethnic groups, the Goths, the Magyars, even the Turks. These theories, while creative, were deeply Eurocentric and politically charged. Then came the Cold War, a new kind of apocalypse. Biblical scholars began suggesting that Gog referred to Russia or the Soviet Union, and Magog to China. Suddenly, ancient prophecy found its way into modern politics, sermons, and headlines. But these interpretations didn't come from maps, they came from fear. And yet, even now, some scholars still believe there's something to the geography. In the remote, rugged highlands of the Caucasus, in the shadowy valleys of Central Asia, you'll find abandoned ruins, crumbling fortifications, and oral histories of tribes that vanished behind walls. Was it just folklore? Or did something truly get buried by time? We've chased shadows across centuries. So let's ask the deeper question. What if Gog and Magog aren't meant to be found, because they're not places at all? In Judaism, Gog is chaos, rebellion against divine order. In Christianity, they represent the final opposition to righteousness. In Islam, they are corruption, consuming the earth until they're swept away in a divine purge. In a sense, every civilization gave Gog and Magog the face of their greatest fear. And those fears? They evolve. In London, statues of Gog and Magog guard the city's guild hall, no longer enemies, but symbols of civic power. In literature, they inspire characters like Tolkien's orcs, or George R.R. Martin's White Walkers. In media, they morph into alien invasions, rogue AI, viral outbreaks. Each generation finds a new face for the same primal terror. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Gog and Magog are not behind a wall. Maybe they're behind our eyes, reflections of the unknown, the uncontrollable, the unfaceable. Maps from every corner of the ancient world tried to tell us something. They didn't just mark rivers and mountains, they mapped meaning. They tried to cage fear, to chart the apocalypse. And in doing so, they gave us one of history's most haunting mysteries. Were Gog and Magog ever real? Possibly. Were they charted? Definitely. Were they found? Not yet. But their legacy is written not just in ink, but in the way we imagine enemies, define the other, and dream of the edge of the world. So we'll leave you with this. Maybe the most important map isn't the one that shows where Gog and Magog are. Maybe it's the one that shows why we looked for them in the first place. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Were Gog and Magog a real people lost to history? A distorted memory of ancient invaders? Or pure myth projected onto the unknown? Drop your theories in the comments. Show us the maps. Connect the dots. Argue your case. And while you're at it, subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten history, ancient conspiracies, and the myths that still move the modern world. Because the map is never finished, and neither is the mystery. Know more, be more.